Thank you, Sharon. I love that song. It was fun singing back with you. I miss singing.
Yeah.
Uh, the theme for May 2021 is Holy, Holy Uprising. The topic for today is revolutionary love. Let us begin with a quote from Ernest Holmes. The spiral of life is upward. Evolution carries us forward, not backwards. Eternal and progressive expansion is its law, and there are no breaks on its continuity. It seems to me that our evolution is the result of unfolding consciousness of that which already is and needs but to be realized to become fact in everyday life. Ernest Holmes. And Valerie Carr wrote, revolutionary love is the choice to enter into wonder and labor for others, for our opponents, and for ourselves in order to transform the world around us. It is an orientation to life that is rooted in joy, loving ourselves, loving our opponents, loving others. I'm going to say that again. Loving ourselves, loving our opponents, and loving others. All three practices together make love revolutionary, and revolutionary love can only be practiced in community. Valerie Carr, See No Stranger, a memoir and manifesto of revolutionary love. Let us state who we came here to be together. I am an ambassador of revolutionary love. And I'm going to pass this on to Reverend Kathleen.
Thank you, Kristen. Beautifully inspiring quotes that Kristen so beautifully articulated. And very inspiring way to start this month, Holy, Holy Uprising. I love the topic. And I love our topic today, revolutionary love. So Dan told me that he loves me even when I don't condition my hair. He tells me that he loves me unconditionally. All right. Michelle's giving me the look.
That's such a dad joke.
Oh, it's terrible. Terrible, Brett.
Oh, okay. So love becomes conditional because of what we learned in childhood, you know, from our social structures, part of the conditioned mind. And it goes like this: you do this for me, or and I will love you, or you don't do this for me and I will withhold my love. That's conditional love. So unconditional love then is a revolutionary act. It says, I will love you no matter what. There's an essential love of the individual. And in our teaching, when we talk about love, it means we know the essential truth of someone even when their behavior is not revealing it. So unconditional love as a revolutionary act then has certain qualities to it. It exudes grace, it exudes compassion and boldness, freely given to all, no strings attached. If we understand how to love this way, we can overcome and resolve whatever challenges life offers us instead of being paralyzed. So I'm going to be talking about three different talking points: revolution, love, and then revolutionary love. So revolution, you know, usually when we hear the word revolution, what do we think? You know, are we thinking war? I mean, we think of the French Revolution, and it was a really bloody war, lots of loss, with an outcome that ultimately was good in terms of changing the social structure. But often that's the way we think of revolution. Yet listen to this definition of revolution. It says a fundamental change of paradigm, a change of thinking or of visualizing something. It's talking about consciousness, right? So revolution then is a revolution in consciousness first, before it brings about change in our lives. And it brings about, and revolution is really about something on a broader scale besides just the individual. And it means, therefore, change in not only our lives personally, but in institutional structures that shape the experiences of all. So here, for example, and this is actually a quote from Reverend Michael Beckwith that I think speaks so much to what revolutionary changes in humanity. It is the lie of scarcity. And it goes like this: there's not enough good to go around. This lie causes conflict, competition, and war. And so what is the truth? The truth is that, and this is the paradigm shift. The truth is that we are infinite beings, and there's more than enough to go around. There's more than enough creative ideas. Why? Because we are one with the universal mind, which is a field of all possibility and all potentiality. There's enough universal creative power to go around. Why? Because omnipotence means the full power of universal law. The creative law is right here where we are, that takes the impress of our thought and brings it into manifestation through our faith and trust. And that there's more than enough love and joy to go around. So there's enough for everyone. We know everything comes from ideas, so it's not about grabbing resources from around us. It's about ideas, an infinite number of ideas within us that acted upon by universal law forms this attractor field. And then we just simply follow the guidance. So there's more than enough to go around. It's really important that we get rooted in this in preparation for this idea of revolution. It's a revolution in consciousness that we're talking about. So our spiritual teaching, Science of Mind and Spirit, is revolutionary because it's rooted in this kind of revolutionary love. The idea of change your thinking, change your life. That's one of our mottos. Change your thinking will automatically result in a change, and thinking, we're talking about all the way down at the belief level, will result in a change in our lives. And again, revolution is a collective thing. It's a leap in consciousness. And while consciousness on a collective level is changing all the time, because change is just the way that it is, revolutionary leaps are rare times in which the leaps take place on such a grand scale that it begins to permeate the whole entire collective consciousness. It's like everybody's changing together. For example, what we've just gone through, we've been able to see what happens during the pandemic, what happens when amazing things happen in the environment during that time. So these leaps of consciousness have had an impact, or this awareness has had an impact on the interest in clean technologies. And so I'm reading daily in Optimist Daily and other places all the different technologies that are arising. People, scientists are interested in what can we do to get rid of plastics from the ocean. And microplastics are a huge environmental problem to marine life. They're teeny tiny bits of plastic that get ingested and eventually cause damage. So there's an interest. There's a team of microbiologists who have been developing a sustainable solution that could remove these tiny pollutants with what? Bacteria. something that already exists. What they found is that there is a sticky, what they call bacterial biofoam, that bacteria tend to clump together, and they use this sticky whatever it is. And so they're using this as nets to catch and attract the microplastics and form them into little balls and then recycle them. Brilliant. I mean, brilliant ideas. There's solutions out there available to us. That's such a great example of the infinite possibilities of universal mind, ideas that come to, in this case, microbiologists, but to all of us that are available when we open to and when we're interested in finding answers to problems. So even though this is still in a state of development, it has great promise for cleaning up our oceans. I love things like that. I love to hear this kind of innovation. So that's revolution. We're talking about revolution in terms of revolution in consciousness. And we can call it radical because, leaps in consciousness are far-reaching. Radical means far-reaching change. So love is the next topic. And I'd like to start with a story. So several years ago, a 3-year-old boy was with his parents at a zoo in Chicago. And the toddler decided he wanted to get a closer look at the gorillas. So he climbed over the railing and fell down into the middle of a group of gorillas and was unconscious from the fall. And so the mother is hysterical, if you can imagine. And the crowd is horrified, and somebody runs to go get the officials. But before the official could get there, there was a gorilla by the name of Binti Jua with her infant on her back that pushed the other gorillas aside, went over, picked up the child tenderly, and carried the child over to the attendant. Wow. Love that's cross-species. We've seen that a lot. We see it on the internet a lot of a goat that becomes a friend with a dog and that kind of thing. Love. And then this is the really cool part of this. Later that same year, Binti Jua became the recipient of the Humanitarian of the Year award by one of the local magazines. Isn't that beautiful? I love that. So love is natural. It's natural to us when all the other distractions and conditioning is out of the way. Signs of Mind and Spirit, our spiritual teaching, is a spirituality that embraces the truth of oneness. And why am I bringing up oneness in the midst of love? Because knowing that we are one life, interconnected, interdependent, of the same source, brothers and sisters of the Most High, leads to this thing called love, having love for one another. Oneness supports that. When we're into separation consciousness is when we see other people as, get into this us and them kind of thinking. So the truth of oneness, in that state, love is a natural way of being. Revolutionary love. Revolutionary love invites us into a way of being, a way of thinking, a way of feeling, a way of acting that is rooted in our love for one another, that ultimate teaching of Jesus, right? Love one another. Love one another. And so revolutionary love then, by its nature, it's not passive, it's very active, it's bold. It asks us to act on behalf of ourselves, on behalf of those we love, and on behalf of those that we have not yet learned to love, what we might call our opponents or our enemies. It's truly about stepping fully and completely into this thing called love, understanding that we are one, that we are all in this together. This is transformative. This transforms consciousness. Remember, love is the universal solvent. It dissolves anything unlike itself. So Valerie Carr then reminds us that all three practices together are revolutionary love. All three practices, and those who we find challenging to love. So I don't know how many of you have seen Valerie Carr's speech. It's on YouTube and I invite you to listen to it. But her speech on revolutionary love begins with the idea of this is labor, the idea of a labor of love, that revolutionary love is like giving birth to a child. It's like labor. It's something that can be learned. It's something that can be practiced. It's something that can be modeled because it's action. It comes from an awareness of oneness and the desire to make life the world a better place. And at the same time, when we love deeply, then we grieve deeply when there's loss. When we love deeply, our anger then is about protecting and standing up for others. And forgiveness, when we love deeply, is about being willing to have that shift in consciousness that brings us back into alignment with love. So remember, we're talking about, when we talk about revolutionary love, we're talking about a paradigm shift, a shift in thinking, a shift in consciousness that gives rise to to new social structures. There are some structures that are in place that may be working just fine, but for the ones that are not working, the ones that are not serving the whole. And I'm reminded of Gandhi's nonviolent action, and it's action. It's not a passive thing. Nonviolent action that is a creative act of revolutionary love. And if you'll remember from last week, one of the things that I learned in this engaging nonviolence class that I've been facilitating is when somebody's doing something that is not right, that is harmful, it's stop, and then you turn one hand and extend your hand in love, like, no, this behavior doesn't work, but I'm still keeping my heart open to you. It's a powerful way of being in life. So the CS Centers for Spiritual Living Global Vision, this is our great overarching organization that's international. One of the statements in it applies so beautifully to today. And it goes like this: we see a world that works for all, where we are called to conscious social action. And Ernest Holmes offers this wisdom that's totally applicable to the crises that we face in this time, whether it's the pandemic, whether it's environmental crisis or political crisis or whatever it is. He said, we should not only pray, we should act, each contributing one's best to two great purposes. The first one is self-preservation. And the second one is the preservation of all. And he said, realizing that there is no self-preservation without preservation for all, because of the interconnectedness of all life. And if we can fool ourselves into thinking we get to have our good to the detriment of others, then we're missing the whole point of interconnectedness of life. So he goes on to say, if the whole nation works together and prays together, a great spiritual power an actual soul force will penetrate not just our nation, but the whole world, helping to bring confidence and right action until the crisis has passed. And so we're seeing that, as people are gathering together, as people are taking right action, and as things then are beginning to alleviate. The crisis is beginning, it's not completely gone, but it's beginning to dissolve. So let us then be part of a holy, holy uprising in revolutionary love. Understanding what revolution means in this case, the change of consciousness. It's an awareness that we're talking about, and we say this every Sunday, all-inclusive love, all-inclusive love. This revolutionary love is the great work of our lives, each and every one. This is something we have in common. Revolutionary love is the great work of our lives, all of us, which brings us into direct experience with the divine in, through, and as all of life. And every time we act through revolutionary love, every time we move, we are moved to love ourselves enough to say enough is enough. Every time we are moved to say about, if we see others being harmed, when we say enough is enough. Every time we love others strongly and fiercely enough to protect them, to stand up for their dignity, to empathize with the struggles and the pain of others. And every time we allow the same love to bring us into a willingness to turn seeming strangers into friends and into loved ones, we are in a state of oneness with the divine, in a state of revolutionary love. So I have a final story that I'm going to end with today. This is a true story out of Washington, D.C. A 14-year-old boy had shot and killed an innocent teen in order just to prove himself to his gang. And at the trial, the victim's mother sat silently. And when the sentence was given, and he was suspended a certain number of years in a juvenile facility, she stood up, looked into the eyes of that 14-year-old that was just convicted, and said, "I'm going to kill you." Not too loving. It doesn't sound too loving, does it? I understand. Let's get on with the story, though. After 6 months, the mother of the slain teen was guided, and I imagine it was probably for her own self-healing, was guided to begin visiting that teen who was in the juvenile facility. And this was his only visitor because he didn't have a family. He had been living on the streets prior to the slaying. And so this was his only visitor. She came and visited him time after time after time, eventually bringing gifts and food for him, whatever the facility would allow, and began to build a relationship with him, began to be touched by him, began to be changed within herself. And she could see that he was beginning to change. And so she kept it up all the way until it was almost time for him to be released. And then she asked him the question, "What are you going to do with your life after you leave here?" And he was confused. He was uncertain. He didn't know, he had nobody to go home to, he thought. And so she had an idea. She said, "How about, I have a friend who has a company. How about if I get you a job there and I have a spare room? How about if you stay in the spare room?" Okay, I'm sure he was thrilled. So after 8 months of him living in her home, working at the job, eating her food, she called him into the living room and sat him down. And she said, "Do you remember the time in the courtroom when I told you that I was going to kill you?" And he looked very sheepishly and said, "Yes." And she said, on that day, I did not want the boy who could kill my son for no reason other than to impress his friends. I did not want him to remain alive on earth. I wanted him to die. I was then guided to visit you, and I developed a relationship with you, and I started bringing you gifts. I mean, I get that. And something amazing happened. I began to change, and you began to change. And so she said, we're both different people. You're a different person. I'm a different person. So in truth, that boy that killed my son is no longer on earth. He's no longer here. He's gone. And she said, what I'd like to do is I'd like to adopt you if you're willing. Can you imagine? And so this woman became the mother of a teen who had killed her own son, a mother that he had never had or that he had never experienced before. Powerful. My friends, this is an example of revolutionary love. And so it is. Okay, Sharon. Now turning this